Well, I'll start now. So Wara and Yama, welcome to Children's Ground's First Nations Education System panel. So we're going to be having a bit of a yarn between all these mob about, working in the First Nations education space. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Gadigal land and pay my respects to elders past and present, as well as acknowledging those mob on the ground who are doing hard work every day to make things better for all of us. We'll start off by getting everyone to introduce themselves and just telling us a little bit about what they do and what their role is in their organization and which organization they're from. We might start with Sophia and Lucinda, if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Sophia MUNG, and I'm the assistant principal in Law and Culture at PURNULULA School in Frog Hollow, Western Australia, East Kimberley. And I also teach the Gija language in each classroom.
Hello, my name is MADELINE. I'm from Warman, but I work in PURNULULA School. I teach at Utyerre Apanpe Forum, and I also do the bus guidance tour. Yeah.
Cool. Lee, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Lee. I am the head of learning here at Children's Ground in Bakanala on Aranda country here in Mabuntua. I am lucky and privileged to be on this panel, I guess, with all of you incredible First Nations educators. As a non-First Nations person in my role, I get the honour of just working alongside of and privileging those knowledges and making sure that there is space for that leadership and supporting that on the ground work that everyone does every single day to bring First Nations issues to the forefront and to centre First Nations knowledges and ways of being and teaching. So it's a real privilege to be here. Thank you.
And I'll just add to that we did have CT from Children's Ground joining us, but unfortunately they're all in first aid training today, so she wasn't able to make it.
Yeah,
but that's okay.
She sends her apologies.
Yeah, that's all good. It's very necessary, obviously, to do that training. And Alana and Fiona, I'll get you guys to introduce yourselves now as well.
G'day Jawan, Nanondi Baja Fiona Lugnan, Yamna Gumbengi Galabanjalan Nyami, Galamimi, Naingi Galambilala, Baria Nirana Gumbengi Wajar. So, hello everyone, my name is Fiona Lugnan. I'm a Gumbengi and Bunjalung woman and I live in Coffs Harbour on beautiful Gumbengi land, country. I'm the Secondary Education Development Manager here at Gumbengi Gingana Freedom School, and I'll transition into the secondary principal once we are allowed to call me that, basically, with our government regulatory requirements. So yes, that's me. So thank you for Dun for having us on the panel today.
G'day, Nanyundu Baja Alana, Naja Medan Gomeronyami, Gala Principal of the Gumbengi Gingana Freedom School. So hello everyone, my name is Alana Jack and I'm a proud Gomeroi woman from up near Narrabri Way, and I'm the principal of the Gumbengi Gingana Freedom School. Sorry, the phone's going in the background.
Cool. Was that it?
Yeah, that's all from me. So yeah, we're on Gumbengi country in Coffs Harbour. We're the first bilingual school of an Aboriginal language in New South Wales.
Awesome. And I forgot to introduce myself before. My name's MADELINE HAYMAN-REBER. I'm a proud Gomeroi woman and communications and partnerships coordinator here at Children's Ground. So thank you everyone for joining us. It's really a privilege to have you all here and a privilege for all of the people that are watching as well to get to learn more about what you do. So I think we can start our questions now. And any of you can answer this, whoever wants to go first. As First Nations educators, what would be your ideal vision of a First Nations education system to look like, and how does it differ from the current mainstream education system?
Did your mum want to go first, or can you go first?
Whoever wants to go can go.
I'll go.
Yep.
Our vision is to have First Nation teachers in the classrooms that will keep the kids comfortable, knowing that someone is there who they feel connected to in the classroom. Schools should be teaching the first language of that area, including Creole and Aboriginal English, as well as international languages. Let them speak it, read it, and write it. For non-Aboriginal teachers to work with the First Nations education classroom as translators for the kids, so they really understand what the teacher is saying. Involve Aboriginal staff in planning student learning in the classroom and on country. The Aboriginal staff can help teachers to find the right people to talk about that area.
And who do you think inspires you to have this vision? Or what inspires you, I guess?
How we work, here, we have good teams and we will work together to create ideas for the kids. Our people inspired us to pass our knowledge to the next generation, especially the dreaming story. The dreaming story we use here help us to teach all areas of the curriculum. And there is nothing we can teach with that as our starting point. Like now we have the technology where we have learned to record every dreaming stories. But before, our elders had to keep it in their heads and pass it on verbally to us. So we are lucky we can record these stories through our digital technology and pass on to them and keep it going forever.
Awesome. Alana and Fiona, what's your school and community doing already to establish and strengthen the First Nations-led education system?
Yeah, so that was beautiful to hear, by the way. I love hearing from other, First Nations school. That was really lovely. So being, I guess, the first school of an Aboriginal language in New South Wales, for us, I'm not sure of the context of the other mob here, but we're aiming to revitalise Gumbaynggirr language here. So the Gumbaynggirr language is no longer a first speaking language. So for us, we're really wanting to create an immersive schooling environment where our kids are really strong and proud, or Gumbaynggirr Dari is what we say here. So they're strong and proud to be Gumbaynggirr people. So our school for us here starts with full immersion. So what we say is BWay English. So from the second you come into the gate, we ask our staff and our families to stop speaking English, and we try and have a really rich, solid period of nothing but Gumbaynggirr spoken. So we check in once the morning bell goes. We do a big check-in where we're all speaking fully in Gumbaynggirr to each other. If you can't converse in Gumbaynggirr, we just ask you not to speak at all, and then we do really rich cultural immersion. So we start each day with singing, dancing, storytelling, mindfulness, all in Gumbaynggirr. So it's a really beautiful, really strong start to the day. So we do that for about the first hour, and then we transition into the classrooms where we do the usual NESA curriculum, but with a Guri lens on absolutely everything we do. So we expect our all of our classes to have Gumbaynggirr language embedded in absolutely everything we do, as well as the stories and philosophies that come with language and culture. So our students are out on country one day a week, learning firsthand all those stories and getting really hands-on knowledge for country. and all of that knowledge from being on country comes back into the classroom and is deeply explored. So the kids are getting a really rich, deep understanding of language and culture. We have a number of elders who are employed in our school, which is different to other models, because we really value our ancestors, our elders, and all that expertise that they come with. So it was really important for us. We've got a full-time elder employed, as well as elders who work casually with our students, as well as teaching language to our families, because family, kinship, community is really important for us as Aboriginal people, as we know, and really breaking down those barriers, including community and families in the school, is really important for us. So we offer a number of language classes during the week, so that Gumbaynggirr language doesn't only get spoken in the school. We want that spoken in the household as well. We have really small class ratios as well, where we've got a full-time classroom teacher and a full-time language teacher per class. So different where I guess in other school settings, you know, the classroom teacher is the keeper of all knowledge. We're not like that here. We know that I guess culturally it's important for us. We all bring a different piece to that puzzle. We've all got different knowledge, and I think we're really good in our space at really driving that with everything we do. So our classroom teacher and our language teacher, who's non-teacher trained, are equal partners in the classroom. So we expect content to be swapped between the two, so that wherever possible, that content that's being taught is being taught in Gumbaynggirr. As well as that, we're also really lucky that our proprietor, PURNULULA, I'm still getting my words with that one, the Aboriginal Corporation, who are the proprietor of our school, have a number of really strong men and women who are experts in the language and culture space. So they're very heavily involved in our school. So it's not uncommon to walk into one of our classrooms and have 5 or 6 people in there supporting our kids, which is, yeah, really beautiful. Mm-hmm. Did I miss anything on that one?
Thanks, guys. And Lee, I guess from our perspective as Children's Ground, how do those approaches compare to what we do at Children's Ground? Can you just talk us through a little bit about how we operate at Children's Ground?
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome to hear. I loved hearing from both of those perspectives. I guess for Children's Ground, I can speak to the model. I wish CT was here to speak more personally to the experience of teaching from the cultural perspective. But I guess around changing the systems and strengthening that educational system, one, there's the practice that we do on the ground, the CG approach, which I'll go a bit more into. And then 2, it's also about things like this, creating that change on a national level and getting a platform for First Nations educators and people to talk and have that national recognition. Around our approach, it is a governance system that is about communities and the people that we work with having a platform for their own decisions. We do a lot of walk and talk for all of the locations that we work with, and we understand that it isn't a one model fits everything, but rather making sure that every community that we work within are the ones leading the change and designing what it looks like on the ground. It is similar to what you're saying. We're reshaping the educational system. We're not trying to fit in to the current Western ideologies of what education looks like. I think you really spoke to that it's reimagining based on what the families and the community need and what you want for your children. And at CG, we do that as well, where communities have strong governance and strong voices, and they lead the education and the practice. They teach in community where the families are from, in language, and they really privilege those cultural knowledges. Everything that we do here is Upmarangela, which is from the land and from the country, and that kinship and that law really drives the learning and shapes all the ways that you teach, whether it is just like being on country or doing and watching elders or parents or grandparents. I think a big thing that really makes us step out of the box is understanding that leadership comes from all of the levels within the cultural practices, understanding that elders, ancestors, as well as parents, grandparents, and children need to be a voice within the educational system. and need to have their own platforms to say what they need and what they want, because at the end of the day, First Nations people have all of the answers. It's just about making sure that those systems make space for that leadership to rise up and create that change.
Thanks, Lee. Go back to Sophia and Cinda. How do you measure the effectiveness of, you know, your own education system, and what kind of indicators, things that you look out for to figure out if it's working for your community?
Success would be measured by improved attendance. The kids will be leaders in both Western and First Nation ways. They know about being leaders by doing welcomes. And in the classrooms, if a non-Indigenous teacher asks a question, the kids don't feel shame to respond. The kids will know the protocols and will explain to teachers what's right and what's not. Kids would be inspired and become more resilient and maybe go to university, getting inspired by their education and their families. Us mob here, we are still sending our kids away to get high school education. It would be better if we had everything here on Gija country or up where we live, high schools and universities run by and for our mob, like the Sami University in Norway, based on Sami language and culture. We would love to have our own university up here to, you know, keep delivering our Gija culture and law.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting concept, having our own universities too. I've never really thought of that. What do you think of that, Alana and Fiona? I saw you nodding there, so.
Yeah. So a group of us have just been in Aotearoa in New Zealand back in February, and we visited a number of immersion and bilingual schools of the Māori language, and one of the schools, Kokori Tukurua, they do actually train their own teachers. So they have a tertiary education model, which actually, like, it's like a cycle where there's students who come up, and then whilst they're still in high school, they're doing like tertiary education level subjects, which then actually produces their teachers. So they're always giving back to their communities. So yeah, so that model really inspired us. And, you know, it's part of, I think, our bigger picture and our long-term vision of trying to really push back on those systems that have historically held our people back, and making sure that we're providing those spaces, because we know what we got to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I guess for us, like, one of the big barriers we're coming up against as well is, you know, our language and culture is still looked at from that deficit model. And it's like, we have got so many amazing educators, like amazing language and cultural teachers, but because they don't have the white men's certificate as well, we can't have them legally taking a class here in New South Wales. And it's like, they're the driver of what's really important, our core as Aboriginal people. And we need them to be doing that, but it's so restrictive. So I guess until we do get that model expanding and looking at other places, like what Fee and the other mob was saying, like, that's definitely, I think, a way forward to really help in that space.
Yeah, growing our own, that's what we need to be doing.
Yeah, and Lee, what do you think of that? Do we experience the same kind of issues with children's grounds being in the Northern Territory?
Yeah, I think
we
with
navigate that, I guess.
Yeah, I think with Children's Ground, we're really lucky that they've looked at this huge, ambitious 25-year approach, and they've said, we're not going to follow that Western model. We're not going to be restricted by what the government requires in order to get funding. And using philanthropy money, we've been able to say, well, we mutually recognize, if not highly regard, elders are above the educators, and if you're bringing cultural knowledge, that is equivalent to a tertiary education degree. And so it's being able to redesign that and say, we recognize that and we value that and we privilege that knowledge. And I think that's a really big part of it, is that so many of these systems that are set up around funding they box in change. And if you can move away from that and you can use alternative money sources, which I know is also incredibly hard, we need to change that system as well. But by using those alternative money systems, we've been able to say, no, all of our educators are educators through their rights, through their knowledge, through their efforts, through their learnings of life experience, as well as family and cultural experience from their ancestors. They hold more information and knowledge than we do. And I think that that's been a really big strength of Children's Ground, is that we're able to say, no, they are the educators and they're the ones leading this. But I think it was really interesting that you talked about kind of, yeah, how else do we create those differences, and how do we make sure, and how do we know that we can, how can we measure that change? And I think when I think to that, I think about, well, it's not just the change that we want to see in the individual child. It's the change that we want to see in the family, the community, and the whole nation. And so we measure the success not only of the learning and well-being of the child, but the health and well-being, the economic development, well-being of that community, and the cultural and creative strength. And when we see growth and success across all of those areas, which we are, then we know that we're doing something right. And I think it's also saying that there will be lots and lots of challenges along the way, but if we have a strong voice of all the people, that they'll continue to come up with the answers, and they'll continue to kind of be flexible and find the next step along to keep seeing that incredible growth.
Yeah.
And off the back of that, I guess, if we're transitioning to self-determined First Nations education system, what, in your opinion, are the key steps or strategies needed to achieve that, that aligns with the cultural values and aspirations of First Nations people? I think all of you can answer this because you're all from different communities, and yeah, I'd love to hear from Sophia and Lucinda again, if you'd like to go.
Sorry about that.
Oh.
Yeah, the key step would be to use people like Marcia Langton, our Indigenous professor in education, who can help us to plan key steps and strategies, community consultation with people in the education system, and local Aboriginal people to set the priorities and design the curriculum from a First Nation point of the view. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. And Lana and Fiona, what do you think about that? What would, be the best way forward in your community?
Yeah, I think something, when we were sort of tossing up this question, something that's very, very important to kind of acknowledge here is how diverse all of our communities and mobs are. So we really pride ourselves on being a really community-driven initiative, and it's really grassroots. And so I think that that's something that we're really proud of, and would definitely kind of recommend if other communities want to sort of to take this on, because it's always making sure that our mob's knowledge and understanding and deep connection with country and with learning and with stories is always the way forward. So I think we've just gone through a process of kind of establishing really clear mission, vision and values of our school, and then really kind of communicating that and ensuring that our staff and our families and our students are kind of on board with that kind of process and that consulting around that all of the time. We really, we're always pushing against the deficit model. Here in New South Wales, we've come to realise through this process that New South Wales schooling is probably the most heavily regulated schooling system in Australia. So even the model that we currently are around, Alana touched on it earlier, we can only be registered as a bilingual school at this point. But that's not what we do. We unapologetically are very proud of the fact that we see ourselves as moving towards an immersion model. And at the moment, the New South Wales system hasn't caught up to that. So we are absolutely like revolutionising education for our mob here in Coffs Harbour for Gumbaynggirr country. And we're really staunch on that. And we have a really staunch group of people, educators, but also community members, experts in all different cultural and language fields that kind of are really behind that. And I think that you kind of really need to be a trailblazer in this space to make any kind of impact. And yeah, I think that that's a really important part of it. But, you know, making sure it's really community led, that's like probably the biggest thing. You know, our curriculum, our education system in New South Wales is very heavily dictated in terms of syllabus. We're moving, soon we'll be moving into the secondary space, which is very much a lot more inflexible to the primary curriculum. And so we're really going to shake things up in secondary. And, you know, not everybody's going to be on board with that, but we are, again, very unapologetic in the fact that we don't see the value in Western style curriculum. There's no point in just delivering the same curriculum with Gumbaynggirr language as the driver. We absolutely believe that we need to flip the entire curriculum and flip every single syllabus that we are required to deliver. I agree. And I think with part of that, like we're always talking about decolonizing our thinking. I guess our way of thinking and our way of learning, unfortunately, we've been taught the Western way. So we're constantly in this mindset shift ourselves, and we have to keep pushing back. We have to keep pushing forward because, you know, we owe it to our ancestors to do that. But it's the only way we're going to actually make it change. And it's the only way we're going to be able to teach our kids our way is if we push back, like Fiona's saying. If we keep towing the line, unfortunately, we'll just keep getting dictated to and told what we have to do. So, yeah.
And it sounds a bit similar to Children's Grant as well. So Lee, I'm interested to hear what how, you know, our model compares to that, and just also like what you think could be the way forward for us as a non-First Nations educator.
Yeah, Fiona, I loved that. I love that unapologetically doing what you need to do because you know it's right for your people. And I guess that leads straight into that, Maddie. I can't speak for people. And so what I see happening is non-First Nations people stepping back like myself and making room for those incredible First Nations leaders that are there and that are ready and that are going to step into these positions and absolutely smash it. I think in terms of those like key steps that we need, you already touched all of them, so I'm not going to get into too much effort, but I guess it's like that whole community, making sure that everyone has their say and that it is everyone together, because it does look different for every single nation and for every single community. I think that it's definitely coming back to being led by that community and strengths-based, which you also talked about, and combining those old and new ways. I think a lot of the educators around here, they talk about, they know the old ways and they know the new ways, and they're going to combine those to create this new platform that really like spans over the life of a child to make sure that they're strong in both worlds. And I think that's a really big key step into creating that like educational change.
Awesome, thank you. Now, considering the broader context of the voice, how does a First Nations education system contribute to the conversations around representation and empowerment of First Nations communities? Sophia and Lucinda, back to you.
Our kids can only represent us when they have the skills and qualifications to be taken seriously by government. For example, when I went to the recent Griffith University Summit, I noticed how many Indigenous people who had degrees of every kind and were in positions where they could make a difference. And we want our kids to be able to speak up, and when they finish here, they can become the ones to speak for our mob and take our issues to decision makers to work with us not against us.
What about you, Alana and Fiona?
So our organisation, Buluri Mulai Nyungan Aboriginal Corporation, and ourselves, Gumbaynggirr Gingana Freedom School, recently have actually just released a media release around our stance on the voice. So we, all of our staff and our elders advisory group were consulted around our stance, and it is a resounding yes, but with conditions. So we are, we really call on the voice to support us to educate our children in our way, which is actually a UN declared human right, to teach our children in how we see fit. And at this stage, Australia actually isn't a signatory to the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So we are really, really hopeful that the voice is a vehicle to ensuring that that we are protected in legislation, that our people, that there's a commitment by the government to truth telling, which will lead to treaties, and allow us our sovereignty. And we practice our sovereignty every day. Our sovereignty is never ceded here on Gumbaynggirr country, and we really are very hopeful that the voice will ensure that our rights are enshrined and protected, so that that we can continue to educate our children in our way.
Yeah. Lee, do you know what the Children's Ground stance is on this, and can you maybe talk to us a little bit about how it came to that conclusion?
Yeah, so I think obviously there's been lots and lots of discussion around the voice, and lots of discussion in multiple languages and consultation, from being very privileged and sitting in the room and hearing William Tillmouth talking with the incredible leaders and workers and families of Children's Ground. We've made a public announcement as well that we are supporting the voice, but seeing it as a first step. This is one step towards that recognition, as you said, and that treaty, and making sure that this is used as a tool to empower further voices to be heard. And I think it is an important recognition to understand that, yeah, every single community and every single nation has its own opinions, and not letting this just be seen as, oh, yes, we voted yes, and so we do understand that First Nations voices are important. No, we're going to still actively work every single day to make those changes and to ensure that they are occurring. But I think in terms of the voice here on the ground, it has been a really incredible talking point and discussion for families to say, again, we've never, sovereignty hasn't been ceded. We are still strong individuals. We have not ever stopped fighting. And I think it's been an incredible opportunity to see that strength come through all of the families and just talk about, this is the beginning. We want to see more, and we're going to ask for more, and we're not going to stop.
Thank you. We'll do one more question, and then we might go into questions from the audience. So if anyone watching has a question, can you please post it in the Q&A box, and we'll go through those after we go through this question. I might start with Alana and Fiona on this one, but how can a First Nations education system address the historical and intergenerational trauma experienced by Indigenous communities, and in what ways can it promote healing, resilience, and cultural revitalization? And I start with you guys because you're in New South Wales, which is, the first point of contact, I guess, and one of the states that has been most heavily colonized, I guess.
Yeah, cool. So we might bounce off each other for this one. I sort of come with a few different lenses on this. I guess prior to my role here, I worked in the Northern Territory in a remote community. So I've seen, I guess, the differences of like a first language, really strong, rich language and cultural community being forced, like shoved the westernized curriculum and I guess departmental restrictions, and how hard that was to flip it to come over here. to see, because of language and culture being an absolute core, the difference that really, really, truly makes for our kids. So I guess as Aboriginal people, we're really naturally trauma informed. I came here and I just felt this sense of relief because our people, like, we get each other, like, we naturally are nurturing. We've got that real strong kinship culture that comes into the school. We're one big family and we look out for each other. And I think that from all the work I did prior to coming here around trauma-informed teaching and learning, it's all of that stuff that I think the mainstream education system's just so academic driven. So like you were talking about success and things like that before, and so often in the westernized and mainstream education system, our success is measured on literacy and numeracy outcomes, where it's so much more than that. And I guess like we're moving away from that, like as a whole, but it's still what's constantly being told to us is success, I guess. Whereas we look at that from a trauma-informed lens of the whole child. And I think by us focusing on language and culture, we really focus on that whole child. Those really rich morals that come through language and culture, we're able to give to our kids. So coming from working with so many kids, like the other mob was saying, that have such a high level of shame to you know, participate in, to do everyday tasks in the classroom. And, you know, that's transferable into the real world. You know, I worked with so many kids who wouldn't want to go up to someone in Kmart and ask for help and things like that. That level of that shame. And because, you know, you've always been, the education system teaches you that being Aboriginal is, you know, not a good thing, because you walk in there, the second you get into a mainstream schooling system, you know, you leave your culture and who you are as an Aboriginal person at the door. Whereas for us, our kids are so strong and proud. They're taught from so little that being Aboriginal is a good thing. They're so strong and proud in their identity. So they're coming in, and what I saw the second I walked in here was these kids that are just so, like Fiona was saying, unapologetically proud to be Aboriginal. They're so strong in who they are. And then that's transferable into them approaching that in their literacy, their numeracy, you know, their levels of resilience and things like that. You know, like kids finish school reading and writing. They're not always going to, I always say this, but they're not always going to finish school being confident in themselves. They're not always going to finish school being, you know, proud and having that level of resilience. And I guess we know, you know, like I don't need to go into it, but like the statistics of the mental health problems for our people is huge. And that's all related to that intergenerational trauma. And if you're just focusing on literacy and numeracy and that academic, like the majority of mainstream schools do, you're missing all of that. And that's where you heal. And that's what we just have seen such big growth for our kids, that, you know, at the start of the year, the start of last year, wouldn't participate in singing and dancing. They also wouldn't participate in any of the, you know, other key learning areas. They were under tables, they were dysregulated. They weren't able to be functioning in a normal mainstream classroom. To the end of the year, participating, so strong and proud, out there dancing at our end of year gobbery. Like that to me is like a huge growth, and that's because of that, what language and culture does for a child.
Yeah, and also just kind of also adding to that, you know, we also see the long-term impacts of, you know, country. Like country is so is part of, you know, we've got, you know, mob, we've got country, we've got language. Like these are all the things that drive us into the future and future-proof our communities. And, you know, our kids, like we've got such this reciprocal relationship with country, where country heals our kids. We call country Wajah in Gumbaynggirr language, so I'll probably speak about Wajah more. So Wajah heals our kids and heals us as Guri people, but by learning on country and learning the stories and learning the language of our country, our kids are also learning to care for country. So we have this cycle of, you know, Wajah being our healer and our safe place, as well as our Junoi being our kids taking on that custodianship and that role of an accountability to Wajah as well. and for their future generations. And I think our children being really understand that. They really understand their place in that cycle. And I don't think that they would get that deep, intimate knowledge and understanding if they were elsewhere and just kind of like participating in cultural programs. Like, what we do here is so integrated and so deep and complex and intimate that there's no mistaking it. And yeah, so I think that's part of that, you know, just really addressing that historical, I guess, reluctance to education here in New South Wales. I'm not sure if it's the same as other states and territories, but in New South Wales, up until like the late 70s, principals could use their discretion to exclude Aboriginal kids from their classrooms in public education on the say-so of a parent who, a white, you know, Urali parent who didn't want their kids in the classroom with a Guri kid. You know, that kind of legacy, that lives on. Some of our mobs, some of our grandparents who were carers for their grandkids and things like that, they were around when that was happening. Like, their own kids were excluded from schools. So, you know, and then schools are like, oh, we can't get parents to come in here. Like, it's a no-brainer. Like, to us, it sort of seems like, really? Like, you're not making that connection? You know, I think we're so all-encompassing and integrating and making sure that we're always consciously putting steps to make sure that we're just an extension of community. Yeah.
And Sophia and Lucinda, being in a more remote location, how do you guys do that?
Well, the whole country needs to understand the history of colonization and what really happened. The truth telling needs to be told. Up here, we desperately need more mental health facilities and rehab centers, not only for our children, but for our adults too, to address the trauma and break the cycle.
Oh, good.
Well,
oh, you want to say? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we've got an example for.
Yeah, the more of us who can speak up better. Sorry. For example, I know a woman who has experienced life trauma, and she couldn't get help for it, and people criticize her for that. And they criticize her about her lifestyle and telling her to clean up. And he tried to get help, but there was no help available for her. And we don't have the skill to help our mob. We can only yarn with her, but we don't have really know how to help her. She really wants help, but there's nothing here for her. So that's all we just want to do with her. We just yarn with her, just try and keep her happy, stuff like that.
And yeah, and our culture has tools that our ancestors used to use for healing, but this trauma, what we experience since colonization, is not something that our ancestors knew, and they didn't know how to deal with it. So it's a substance that got introduced to our mob.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We might go to questions from the audience now, just because we've got 9 minutes left.
Sorry, we talk too much over here.
We're here to talk and hear everyone's opinions and thoughts. I think it's really great. This one is from Auntie Steph, who we've had on before. She's amazing. So shout out to Auntie Steph. Thanks for watching. She says New South Wales probably have the most teachers and principals, and we need our own dreams for us to change and be resistant. Resistant. We need to do what Children's Ground says and just do things our way. How do we get those with the most privileged voices to support language and culture? And also our plan, it explains the Children's Ground approach, it takes 25 years. So how do we get all to see that the pulling apart of the current system and to educate our way? Sophia and Lucinda, would you like to go first on that one?
Well, we've started to work with the Western Australian Curriculum Authority to do it our way, the Gija way, the language of this country. And we're using dreaming stories because the kids connect to the dreaming stories on country. We take them out on country, and they've got everything. They've got they're learning science, maths, all the main subjects that the Western society needs us to follow. So in our dreaming stories, we've got all that has science, and we're using it with our dreaming stories on country where the children connect and they know about everything on their country, Gija land.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's going to be approved soonish. So hopefully the first school in Western Australia to get that going for us. And hopefully the other schools in Western Australia will follow us.
That's so exciting. So we've got this anonymous attendee. This is for Lana and Fiona. How did you start up your own Deadly Black School in New South Wales?
So I'll let Fee answer this. I've only been on board for the last 18 months, but I can tell you it took our amazing CEO and lots of elders a hell of a lot of a fight. So
Yeah.
hand it over to Fee.
Yeah, so I guess like I could just talk forever, but we have here on Gulbenga country, we have Murrubai Aboriginal Languages Cooperative who are in near Buckanau, but they started in Kempsey on Dungutty country. They have been fighting this fight for over 30 years on Gulbenga country about, revitalising Gulbenga language. We had, so that was, I guess that's like, a long time ago with the incredible Goa Gary, Uncle Gary, who's the CEO of Murrubai. We also have our last kind of first speaker, unfortunately, joined ancestors a few years back. And he was a driving force in terms of conversational Gulbenga language. So the CEO of Bullering Wollongong Aboriginal Corporation, Clark Webb, he was like a mentee, I guess, of that elder and also of Uncle Gary Murrubai, and Uncle Miklo Jarrett as well. If anyone knows Uncle Miklo, he's kind of infamous in the language and culture space. And he, and so that's kind of like the background. I guess the reason I'm saying all these names is that it really does take a whole community effort. And it takes that vision. So I remember the first time that Clark started talking about starting up her own school, like there was a lot of people in the community going like, wow, that's pie in the sky. Like, and it was definitely that kind of vibe of, yeah, that sounds great, but like, how would you do that? So I think that really grassroots community-led change is very, very important here. And it's because that's how you get your community to come to it. I also sorry to butt in, but I also think like I've only known Clark for 12 months, but you can't tell that fella no. Once he's got something in his life, he'll fight. Yeah. So you definitely need those people in your community who are willing to fight and are willing to like not take no for an answer and are willing to kind of, and also and with that comes, also willing to kind of cop it. Because, and I think that needs to be really acknowledged here because, as you know, anytime there's change that is made, there are people that will fight it tooth and nail as well. And I think that in terms of establishing your own system, you've got to have people that are very thick-skinned and that are willing to fight and also cop it from all angles.
Because we still cop it even now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we still
cop it.
Still going to stick together.
Yeah. One thing that we would really like to do is, you know, we're still in such a transition mode ourselves. We reckon that we're going to be continually refining probably for the next 25 years. So I actually really liked that idea of a 25-year vision. You know, because we're going to be in that cycle as well for a long time to come. But in New South Wales especially, you know, we'd be really happy to kind of help mobs, you know, with setting up what, you know, like we don't want mobs to kind of have the hard fights that we've had, you know. Like once we kind of have set our curriculum, once we've set, you know, we're really happy to share, you know, with like-minded mobs. I think that's really important. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks guys. Well, we'll start wrapping it up now. Thank you all for joining us. To people who are watching and also to you guys, all the panelists. It was really interesting to me as well to listen to what you all had to say and how it compares to what we do at Children's Grounds. I just wanted to do a little promo. So we're going to be holding a Utyerre Apanpe Forum in Mpantua from the 17th to 20th of July. So most of you are coming, right? I think, which will be so exciting to all get together and be able to have these yarns in person, face to face. It is First Nations only. So if you would like to, oh God, what have I done? If you would like to come along, if you're a First Nations educator or teacher in this, sorry, where is my, then I've just posted a link to it in the chat. You can jump online to Humanities and register yourself. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you there if you come.
Do you want to explain what a Utyerre Apanpe is?
Sorry, a Utyerre Apanpe is so for all of us to get together, well, all the educators to get together from all over Australia and talk about their different approaches to the First Nations education system and just share different stories and points of view. So it's a really good opportunity and a great networking opportunity as well. Cool. Thank you, everyone.
Cool.
Let's enjoy the rest of your night or afternoon if you're in WA.
Thank you.
Yada, 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 yada. So hopefully we can.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.